The holidays are here. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Let's catch up on the latest NASCAR news and, of course, controversy. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. December is already here. Hope y'all got some good diecast deals on Black Friday. I just got back from spending some time with my family, and I was reminiscing of Christmases from my childhood, and I was thinking about some of my favorite Christmas gifts. I found this photo recently looking through old albums of apparently young Eric unwrapping NASCAR Thunder 2004. Maybe this was a birthday, actually. I didn't check the date, but I do know most years for Christmas growing up, the latest NASCAR console video game was high on Santa's list, or my list to Santa. Anyway, that ties into our first bit of NASCAR news we're catching up on today. A few days ago, Motorsport Games posted that after December 31st, all NASCAR game titles and their DLC content will no longer be available for purchase on all digital storefronts, but will remain available to play after this time. They say to look out for special deals and discounts later this month leading up to that December 31st doomsday, but this effectively means that at the end of this year, fans will no longer be able to purchase the NASCAR Heat series, nor the latest NASCAR 21 Ignition abomination. I'm not sure exactly why this is happening. I'm sure it has something to do with the NASCAR console game license transferring from Motorsport Games to iRacing. iRacing has been hard at work developing a new NASCAR console video game set to release in fall of 2025, which is very exciting. They continue to update fans with their Dev Diary video series. They've done so in just the past few weeks. As someone who, again, going back to this photo that I've shown y'all before, I grew up with NASCAR console video games. I credit the NASCAR Thunder series, some of the mid-2000s EA Sports classics. I credit them for teaching me so much about the sport. Playing those games as a young, impressionable kid is how I learned the tracks. It's how I learned many of the drivers and paint schemes of that time. That's where I learned that it's not just all about left turns. You get in that video game, whether I was playing on a Logitech steering wheel in my parents' living room or even just on a PlayStation 2 controller, I felt the intensity, the pressure of being door to door for dozens and dozens and dozens of laps. Video games are a gateway into becoming a bigger fan of said thing. I was the same way with the old Major League Baseball, The Show games. I think they still make those. I haven't played one in a while, but as a kid, I was eating that up. Anyway, NASCAR gaming fans have endured for a while now. Hopefully the iRacing game lives up to the hype. Assuming it does release in the fall of 2025, that'll mean NASCAR fans have gone at least 4 years without a new console release. And I'm not counting that, what was that, NASCAR Arcade Rivals Rush? I forgot about that game. Did y'all forget about that game? Did anyone play that game? NASCAR 25 coming in late 2025. Let's move on from video games to Netflix streaming shows. According to recent industry reports, the second season of NASCAR's Netflix show, Full Speed, will air in April of 2025. Season 2 of Full Speed will focus on the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Excited to watch. Season 1 was awesome. Gave us some great insight into the races themselves, but more than that, gave us a look into some of the star drivers' personal lives. What do they do during the week? The series is obviously meant to rival Formula One Drive to Survive, trying to piggyback off that boost in popularity. The first season of Full Speed, though, I think by all available metrics would be considered a solid success. Hopefully season 2 gains on that, but releasing in April, 2 months into the start of the next NASCAR Cup Series season, that's unfortunate. I imagine it takes a long time to edit together hundreds of thousands of hours of footage. Netflix is busy. They have specific release windows for certain shows. Maybe the April slot was the only window where they could effectively promote the NASCAR show. I'm not sure the logistics behind this scene, but as a fan, it would have been best if this show could have released in like early February, the week before the Daytona 500. That would have been a marketer's dream. April? we won't be talking about 2024 anymore by April. In fact, a lot of folks don't want to talk about 2024 even now. So unfortunate timing, but I am still looking forward to seeing season 2 of Netflix's Full Speed. Let me know what you're looking forward to most from that show down in the comment section below. Last week, Josh Reaume of Reaume Brothers Racing, NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series team, posted a series of memes on X, including this one criticizing some apparent proposed NASCAR Truck Series rule changes. Here's another one. Yeah, safe to say Josh Reaume not exactly happy with what was recently slid across his desk. He offered some specifics in this response to a fan. Reaume said, "Next year, teams will be required to have non-sponsor branded behind-the-wall fire suits. This is removing a sellable asset from teams." Whoa, what? You mean NASCAR won't allow Lane Riggs's team to wear Love's fire suits on the pit box? Tricon can't put Toyota on their uniforms? What? How does this make any sense? Leave it to reporter Matt Weaver, Sportsnot, to do a little extra digging. I'll link his full article down in the description below, but he reports on 2 key details. First, Reaume is correct that an expected Truck Series rule change next year would prevent behind-the-wall crew members from wearing sponsor logos on their fire suits. But secondly, Weaver does confirm that over-the-wall pit crew members, the folks changing the tires, adding gas to the truck, they are allowed to still have team sponsorship and branding, though the difference next year is that they must wear the same designed fire suit all year. So like in the case of Tricon Garage, they can't be wearing Safe Light uniforms one week and then the next week you'll be running generic Toyota fire suits. Like they have to wear the same design every race next season. So still placing some limitations on teams there. This is all weird. Kevin Harvick replied with, "What in the world is happening?" Denny Hamlin responded, "It's called cutting your way to prosperity, Kev. Duh." Denny Hamlin has been very anti-cost cutting for quite some time now, so that response is not surprising. There are a couple other details that Matt Weaver notes. Weaver notes that NASCAR issued several penalties to different Truck Series teams last year for not wearing up-to-date safety equipment. But Weaver also reports, and this is where it gets interesting, that there is a Truck Series collaboration committee representing 24 Truck Series entries that apparently suggested these uniform rule changes to try and cut costs for the teams. So, okay, does this all make sense? NASCAR is going to place restrictions on Truck Series team uniforms next year, apparently because at least some Truck Series teams asked for this in an attempt to cut costs. Big picture, that's the story. That's the controversy. I'm confused. This isn't the same as the pit gun controversy from several years ago. Remember where several big budget teams were dramatically overspending to develop pit guns that would give them a slight advantage on pit road? NASCAR came down and said, "No, we're cutting that out. You guys are all going to use the exact same spec pit gun from here on out. Stop overspending." This isn't the same though, because how are team uniforms providing any sort of competitive advantage? I don't understand why it would be in the team's best interest to remove inventory. Like, all of these teams, Cup, Xfinity, and Trucks, are desperate for sponsorship dollars. You have crew member uniforms that you could sell to a sponsor. Why would you want to restrict that? Like, no one's forcing you to sell that inventory. If you want to run the same fire suit all year long because it's cheaper, then go for it. But if you have sponsors willing to pay for branded fire suits, why would you see what I mean? Why would you limit yourself? The safety argument makes sense. A lot of crew members on smaller teams will use old fire suits, old equipment, and some of it, as was noted in penalties last year, may not be up to current SFI specifications. So NASCAR making these changes is now going to force every Truck Series team likely to update their suits, get the latest and greatest and safest stuff. That sucks for the smaller teams that maybe can't or will struggle to afford those changes. But again, if the collaboration committee signed off on this, here's what I think happened. Just like in the Cup Series, Truck Series teams come in different shapes and sizes, different budgets, different goals. Maybe some of the bigger teams do see this as a way to get their costs under control. Smaller teams may see this as an unnecessary expense. That's what Josh Rayum seems to be implying. But those bigger, more competitive teams are often the most influential. I could see a manufacturer or one of the big teams driving this decision. It's unfortunate that the meta, if you will, continues to be cut. Like, let's be honest, NASCAR today is not nearly as big as it was 20 years ago, so naturally the sport needed to scale down. Some of the fat needed to be trimmed off, unfortunately, but now we're getting to the point where we're starting to trim into the steak itself. The flavorful bits are getting chopped and left by the wayside. Obviously, nobody goes to the racetrack to see what pit crew uniforms the teams are wearing, but this is just the latest example. We cut back on the amount of practice, shortened the on-track content on a race weekend. That's something that during the pandemic teams asked for. NASCAR obliged. And during the pandemic, the industry learned that race weekends could be much leaner and the on-track product would not be significantly impacted. The fan experience at the track could be, but not the actual race itself. And that's what brings in the big money, the big viewership. Focusing on the Truck Series in particular, I wonder what the future of this series looks like. I showed you that meme from Rayum where the Truck Series teams are desperately asking for more purse money, a larger share of the TV revenue. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I know the Truck Series gets a sliver of what the Cup Series gets. And obviously the Cup Series is the biggest series. It should get by far the most money, but perhaps it's getting an outsized portion of the revenue and trucks are getting shafted. I'm sure a lot of Truck Series teams would agree. I think there's also been talk this offseason of some spec parts being added to the trucks. They already run spec Ilmor engines. In some ways, these cost-cutting measures have helped the competition. I do think the spec motors have evened the field a bit, made for closer racing, maybe more competitive racing, you might argue. But we see this in trucks and in Xfinity and now in Cup a bit as well. But drivers who bring large amounts of funding, whether that's family money or a loyal longtime sponsor, those drivers are getting the best seats pretty consistently. So, we've seen drivers, we saw drivers in trucks last year who should not be out there. We get glimpses of that maybe in Xfinity sometimes, and I worry before long that's going to trickle into the NASCAR Cup Series. Back to the ratings point, yeah, NASCAR is not as big as it once was, but the ratings have stabilized over the past 3, 4, 5 years. It would be nice if we would stop cutting and maybe actually start to build. I can't say NASCAR hasn't invested money into the sport. The Netflix deal, for example, that's an investment. The Chicago Street Race, the LA Coliseum, attempting to build out the sport in new large markets. Those are investments. Mexico City next year, that's an investment. I don't want to pretend like NASCAR isn't trying to expand the sport, that all they're doing is cutting. That's not true. That isn't true. But they are still cutting quite a bit. And now it's to the point where some of these cuts are impacting the on-track product. And if the on-track racing product gets worse, if NASCAR, widely speaking, becomes less enjoyable to watch, how can you ever expect the sport to then grow? The sport will never be anywhere close to as culturally relevant as it was 20 years ago, not with that kind of thinking. So that's where when Denny Hamlin criticizes the constant cuts, I think he makes a point. It's unfair to say NASCAR is only asking people to cut. They are trying to build, expand, grow, but some of these cuts, like crew uniforms, really? I guess some Truck Series teams asked for it, but why? Why is this something we're talking about? Why are the teams willingly letting sellable inventory go away? I don't get that. I don't. I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, I guess this is only a big story, a big controversy because it's the off season. Slow holiday week last week. Not much else to talk about, but it is interesting to tie it into the larger cost-cutting narrative. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. That's all I've got. Thanks for watching this episode, folks. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more NASCAR discussion every single day, quite nearly, at least, even during the off-season. Big thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters as well. Have a great rest of your Monday. Hope your week gets off to a good start. I will talk to you again soon. Thanks again for watching.